Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the definitive map of telecommunications. We're going all the way from the absolute basics of raw physical signals right up to the dizzying heights of AI-driven networks. We're going to break down exactly how our connected world actually works.
And real quick, before we jump in, a huge shout out to Virtualization Options LLC. The material we're covering today is actually drawn straight from Chapter 2 of their incredibly detailed 15-part masterclass tutorial, Modern Telecommunications. They're this fantastic Colorado-based technology research, education, and advisory organization. Focusing specifically on what's covered in Chapter 2 gives us the absolute perfect vantage point to really understand modern networking.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the foundations of modern connectivity, then move into the digital IP revolution. After that, we'll unpack networking hardware and operations, explore mobile and cloud convergence, and finally wrap up with the future of telecommunications. Okay, let's dive right in and start connecting some dots.
Starting off with Section 1, Foundations of Modern Connectivity.
You know, ever since Samuel Morse fired up the telegraph in the 1840s, we've obviously needed infrastructure. And to truly grasp where we're at today, you can really distill modern telecom infrastructure into this elegant, three-layer hierarchy. Down at the base, you've got the physical layer. This is the literal stuff, your cables, antennas, the raw transmission media moving signals from point A to point B. Sitting right above that is the logical layer, which basically gives structure to all that raw data through protocols, addressing, and switching. And finally, sitting at the top, we have the application layer. This is the fun part, what you and I actually interact with every day. Voice, video, web services, you name it. Literally everything we're discussing today fits somewhere into this stack.
Now take a look at this specific number, 64,000 bits per second, that is. This single number is, without a doubt, the bedrock of digital telephony. See, the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem basically proved that to perfectly reconstruct an analog human voice digitally, you have to sample it 8,000 times a second using 8 bits per sample. So 8,000 times 8, that gives us 64,000 bits per second. This math birthed the classic G711 voice channel, which is a standard that literally still anchors networks worldwide today. Kind of wild to think about.
But here's the thing. You obviously can't build a global network if every single phone call needs its very own dedicated wire, right? You have to share, and there are 3 foundational ways of multiplexing, or sharing, that transmission medium. First up, frequency division multiplexing, or FDM, which assigns specific frequency bands to channels. It's exactly how AM and FM broadcast radio works. Then there's time division multiplexing, TDM, which gives each channel a repeating 125 microsecond time slot. That's the logic behind your classic T1 lines. And finally, statistical multiplexing. This one is entirely demand-driven. It allocates bandwidth based on actual, real-time traffic, which makes it incredibly efficient for the bursty, unpredictable nature of internet packets.
And that leads to a really crucial point. Statistical multiplexing allows for overbooking, which is truly the economic engine of telecommunications. Think of an internet service provider, kind of like an airline overselling seats on a flight. ISPs routinely oversubscribe their access links by ratios of 20 to 1, sometimes even more. They're entirely relying on the statistical improbability of every single user transmitting heavy data at exactly the same second. Now, when that assumption breaks, say during a massive global event where everyone logs onto HD video calls simultaneously, well, that's when you get network congestion.
Moving on to Section 2, the digital IP revolution.
Okay, so to understand the shift from dedicated analog circuits to the packet-switched world that totally transformed network economics, we really have to look at the OSI reference model from 1984. Now, I know the full model has 7 layers, but these bottom 4 are the real heavy lifters. Layer 1 handles those raw physical bits and voltages we talked about. Layer 2 introduces structure with Ethernet frames and MAC addresses on a local link. Layer 3 is the big one. That's where IP addressing and end-to-end routing across multiple networks happen. And Layer 4 manages the actual transport, deciding between, say, reliable TCP delivery for loading a web page or super-fast best-effort UDP delivery for a real-time video stream. And look, even if no real-world protocol matches this model perfectly, it is absolutely the indispensable vocabulary for any IT professional troubleshooting a network.
And as the internet absolutely exploded, we needed a massive architectural leap at Layer 3. The original standard, IPv4, gave us about 4.3 billion addresses, which honestly sounds like a lot, until literally everyone on the planet got a smartphone. IPv4 only survived this long because of a clever workaround called Network Address Translation, or NAT, which basically allows thousands of private devices to hide behind just one public IP. But IPv6, it totally changes the game. With 128-bit addresses, we suddenly have 340 undecillion unique IPs. That is enough for every single IoT device, sensor, and smart fridge in the modern era to have its own globally routable address, complete with plug-and-play auto-configuration.
All right, Section 3, Networking, Hardware, and Operations. So how do we actually take this theoretical OSI model and build a physical, functioning enterprise network? Well, it really comes down to a stark architectural choice between switches and routers. Think of Layer 2 switches as sprinters. They forward frames locally based on MAC addresses using application-specific integrated circuits, ASICs. And because that logic is baked directly into the hardware, it's blindingly fast and super cheap. Layer 3 routers, on the other hand, they are the traffic cops. They make the complex forwarding decisions based on IP addresses, they enforce security policies, and they physically separate network boundaries. Now today, those lines are definitely blurring a bit with high-speed Layer 3 switches, but fundamentally understanding this distinction is absolutely key to solid network design.
Now, taking things a step further, bridging those local on-premises hardware switches with public cloud workloads requires some serious engineering. We are talking dedicated interconnects for ultra-low latency and massive horizontal scaling in the cloud to meet sudden load spikes. And what's really fascinating here is the physical toll this all takes. The energy demands of AI compute and hardware accelerators have become so wildly power-dense that modern data centers are literally moving away from traditional air conditioning. They're increasingly relying on advanced liquid cooling just to keep the server racks from melting.
Zooming way out from the data center, we hit the decentralized internet core. Remember, the internet is not just one giant network. It's a massive web of tens of thousands of independent autonomous systems. And the glue holding it all together? That's BGP, the Border Gateway Protocol, which coordinates routing across roughly 80,000 totally independent entities. Combine that massive routing table with DNS translating domain names into IPs billions of times a second, and DHCP automating local access, and you have the miraculous, completely decentralized engine of the modern internet. Which brings us to Section 4, Mobile and Cloud Convergence. This is the point where wireless technology finally catches up to fixed-line data, merging voice and the internet onto a single IP highway. And just look at how rapidly this evolved. We started with 1G, which was entirely analog, totally hackable, and ran on dedicated radio channels. 2G brought in digital modulation and SMS. 3G was the one that finally crossed the threshold into real, usable mobile broadband. But 4G LTE, that was the true paradigm shift, a totally all-IP packet-switched architecture. And now today, 5G has introduced massive MIMO, using huge arrays of antenna elements in millimeter wave frequencies to deliver staggering capacity and network slicing. But getting to that all-IP world definitely wasn't painless. Do you remember the early days of 4G LTE? Networks suffered from this terrible thing called the circuit-switched fallback delay. See, because early 4G couldn't handle voice natively, if someone called your phone, your device physically had to drop its high-speed LTE data connection, switch all the way over to a legacy 2G or 3G tower, process the call, and then reconnect to 4G afterward. This caused a massive, completely exasperating 3 to 8 second delay of dead air just to connect a phone call. It wasn't until Voice over LTE, or VoLTE, came along and gave voice packets top-tier prioritization that this clunky workaround was finally retired.
Finally, Section 5. The future of telecommunications. We are currently pushing past traditional boundaries, straight into realms of ambient energy and quantum physics. The future is rapidly moving toward what we call invisible infrastructure. For example, we're looking at zero-energy devices that literally harvest power from ambient light, thermal gradients, or even stray radio waves in the room. Then there's ambient backscatter communication. These devices don't even bother transmitting their own radio signals. They just reflect and modulate data onto the existing Wi-Fi or TV signals already bouncing around in the air. But honestly, the most mind-blowing development has to be metamaterial surfaces. We are actively engineering building materials to act as electromagnetic arrays, meaning the building itself won't just house the communication system, the building is the communication system. But of course, with all this incredible connectivity comes a monumental security threat. Our current public key cryptography, things like RSA and ECC, they rely on incredibly complex math problems that are practically impossible for classical computers to solve. However, they will be easily broken by future quantum computers. Because of this, the telecommunications industry is right now in a massive race against time to implement quantum-safe cryptography before quantum computing matures enough to crack the encryption securing today's global networks. Which leaves us with this final thought.
We've gone from the simple taps of Morse code to 64 kilobit voice channels to massively overbooked IP networks, and now we're looking at structural metamaterials and quantum cryptography. The boundaries between these layers are just completely vanishing. So, as an IT professional today, my question for you is this: are you ready to step back and think in interconnected systems rather than just isolated silos? Because grasping this entire massive technological arc, that is exactly where the true value lies moving forward. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.